God Family Country, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, want to show you something that I found in the New Testament that I thought was really cool one day. I was reading the Bible and I was thinking, I know Jesus gave these commands, and you'll read them throughout the New Testament, but throughout the whole New Testament, what did Jesus say that sounded like some commandments? And disclaimer, these aren't, thou shalt. Just out of reading the Bible, what are some things that Jesus said that could be commandments in our life? And I got 50 of them for you. 50. So we're going to look at 50 of these commandments, and you're going to see them on the screen already. And they're 50 commandments of Jesus. Now, the first two we're going to get into are the ones that we know and love so well, right? The two greatest commandments, right? When Jesus was down here, he said that these two commandments would help you fulfill all other commandments. And the first one is love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That's Matthew 22:37 through 38. The reason why I'm doing King James Version is not that it's my favorite version. I'm planning to put this out for you to be able to download and take. And unfortunately, a lot of Christian Bible versions are owned by companies who charge money. So, first commandment, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Matthew 22:37 through 38. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and really one that you could spend the rest of your life trying to accomplish. And looking at your life, you might say, well, how do I apply this to my life? And I would look at this and say, well, do I love God with all my heart? Are there things in my heart that conflict with loving God with all of my heart? Do I have love for something else that would not match up? And do I love God with all my soul? Just my very fiber of my being. I love God. And do I love God with all of my mind, all of my thoughts, all the things that I'm thinking constantly, things that not the temptations that come in. I get, boom, they come in, boom, bop, bop, bam. No, I'm just joking. They come in, boom, you push them out, and you move on. I'm talking about those that come and you're like, yeah, ooh, okay, let's hang out a little while. Let's think about this, and that creates the ever-ending battle of loving God with all your heart, soul, and mind, because now you're not loving God with all your mind. So this commandment right here, we could open a session up every day and talk about how to do this one commandment. And I think that we could find something new every day on how it's applicable on things that are going on in us. We can take inventory and find inconsistencies. And that's one thing that I want to mention to you. This is a marathon, it says in the Bible. So in Hebrews 12:1, there's a verse, New King James Version. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. And the reason why we need to love God with all our heart, soul, and mind, it's a training, it's a battleground every day to apply this type of lifestyle, to put on this armor of God, because one thing you're going to get from Hebrews 12:1 is that sin, which so easily ensnares us, which always catches us up, you are not alone in getting caught up in sin so easily and looking up in the mirror or in the rear view mirror, or you pop your mirror down in your car and you're looking at yourself like, how did I get into this situation? Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. So when they're saying to lay down, a lot of times you're thinking about the heaviness of sin that we don't even realize we're carrying around, and it's just rounding our back and bearing us down and putting pressure on our joints and causing so much stress in our lives. And we can just drop it and love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. It is so freeing. The mind will fight you at first. The flesh will fight you at first. But has anybody ever went from, if they could remember, non-athletic to athletic, and the journey there, and the mind kicking and screaming the whole way, and the mind wanting what was ultimately detrimental to it, to the mind now loving the discipline and the exercise? If you haven't had that before, I apologize that you haven't experienced that. I recommend to start it any way that you can. Everybody's on their own path and has their own limitations. The reason why I bring up this going from no exercise to exercise is because the mind, even me exercising to this day, the mind will tell me and start making excuses on why I can't do it. It even get me upset because of, especially with me, a lot of times it's time management and the mind being mad that I'm making time for exercise. And so I make sure to make a point for exercise. And sometimes if the brain's like, I don't want to do a mile, I'm like, cool, we're going to do 2. So you don't have to worry about doing 1 mile. We're going to go do 2 miles flesh. And we'll go to 2 miles and pound it out. And so what I wanted to say is that if we look at Hebrews 12:1, is that if we lay aside every weight and sin that so easily ensnares us. And here's another thing, that weight easily ensnares us, catches us, and pushes us down and weighs us over. And it's so easy for us to get caught and pick this weight up. Well, one of the 2 greatest commandments and number 1 we have on our list, which is love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, is that if you love God with all your heart and soul and mind, this is the first and greatest commandment. And I think this commandment keeps the wolves at bay. This is not something that just pleases God and makes him happy and feel all warm and fuzzy inside. This is he's giving us a recipe to have the best life that we can have on earth. And that's in God, in our Creator, who created us and knows what's best for us. So this is, again, the 50 commandments of Jesus. This is the first commandment, and I love this commandment. It is the greatest commandment. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And we've opened that up and seen how we could apply that to our life. And we've seen what it looks like when we don't apply that to our lives, the sin, which is the weight. And let us know that this is something that we apply every day because we're running with endurance the race that is set before us. This is a marathon. We're going to run this race every single day. We're going to get at it. We're going to get it. And we got to be ready for it. Are you ready for it? And that is number 1 of the 50 commandments of Jesus in the New Testament. Remember, the 50 unofficial commandments, some of these are commandments, so this one is an official commandment, but these are going to be the 50 commandments of Jesus in the New Testament.